Hello again. After talking about Afrocentrism this morning, a couple of people have ticked me off for allegedly ignoring civilisations in Africa, which seemingly emerged spontaneously and were not a product of colonialism. I have dealt with this subject before, but it seems that some people were unaware of this. Let me briefly examine these claims by running through three of the cultures to which my attention is directed from time to time. It is perfectly true that Zimbabwe was the home of an indigenous sub-Saharan culture, which arose without any external influences upon it. Unfortunately, this so-called civilization achieved nothing at all of any note. At the time that magnificent buildings such as Salisbury Cathedral in England and Notre Dame in Paris were being erected, Europe was full of people who could read and write, and the Renaissance was about to flower. We know this because we can see the buildings from that time and also read the poetry which was being written, and the philosophy, and science, and mathematics. We can look at the paintings and sculptures, which are the product of European civilization in the Middle Ages, round about 1200, 1300 and so on. In southern Africa, in what is now the country of Zimbabwe, there were at that time, the Middle Ages, a tribe of people living in grass huts. These people produced no books, they were all illiterate, having no written language. They practiced agriculture and their most sophisticated tools were the plough and the spear. No mathematics, no science, no philosophy. What they did manage to do was build some dry stone walls, the kind of thing which in Europe were being erected in the Bronze Age. The thumbnail to this video shows some of these walls. This was the absolute peak of indigenous culture in sub-Saharan Africa in the Middle Ages, and indeed up until the time of the arrival of English colonists in the 19th century. That was it, some dry stone walling. I have spoken before about the kingdom of Aksum in what is now Ethiopia and Eritrea. This was certainly an impressive civilization, and it was indubitably in Africa. It had a written script, an awful lot was going on in the Aksumite civilization. It wasn't really an African culture though. I know this without the slightest shadow of a doubt because I can actually understand some Tigrinya and Amharic, which are languages spoken in this part of Africa. I might mention that I have, after making a previous video on this subject, been contacted by a couple of Tigrinya-speaking Africans who thanked me for what they thought was a fair account of their culture and the history of their civilization. About 4,000 years ago, Semites from what is now Saudi Arabia and Yemen crossed the Red Sea and colonized what is today Ethiopia. They brought with them their language, which is of course related to Hebrew and Arabic. There were later waves of colonists who established a kingdom called Aksum in Ethiopia, partly in Ethiopia, partly in the southern part of the Arabian Peninsula. This is why Ethiopia, unlike other African countries, has an ancient writing system, which is based upon Proto-Arabic. The African languages in that country, things like Oromo, are regarded as low status to this very day. Amharic is high status because it was a language of the elite, the colonial administration, if you like. This is how I can recognise some words in both Amharic and Tigrinya, because I speak Hebrew. Aksum was not an African civilization, but a Semitic one. Mali, about which people also boast as having been a centre for learning and having the oldest university in the world and various other ridiculous things, was a collection of mud buildings until the French colonial administration showed the people there how to build things with more than one story. It is true that there was a mosque there, built of mud, but and also that Arab traders and Tuareg stayed there at times. All the culture of Mali, though, was created not by black sub-Saharan Africans, but rather by the Berbers and the Arabs. The Tuareg are a Berber people, by the way. This is why Mali did not become important until 600 years after the Arab conquest of North Africa. It took that long for Arab culture to permeate south into Africa. The Berbers and Arabs went to Mali, and that is why all the documents from that time are written in the Arabic script. There was no writing in Africa before Semites went there and taught the people living there how to write. That's what happened in Mali, and it's also what happened in Ethiopia. I'm sorry to pour cold water on the claims of great African civilizations in the past before the coming of colonial powers of either Semitic or European origin, but there it is. In sub-Saharan Africa, there was no writing, no buildings with upper stories, no wills, no machinery, no roads. All these things only appeared once Arabs, French, and English administrations introduced them. Left to their own devices, those living in Africa below the equator didn't come up with any of these ideas.